in terms of FATF methodology, we see that there are 4 core issues on the basis of which FATF actually evaluates and assesses the performance of countries with regards to anti-money laundering efforts. The first core issue is that how well and in what circumstances are the potential cases of money laundering identified and investigated. In response to this core issue, once we analyze India's performance, we see some very glaring issues. For example, number one, when we see that there is only one agency which is called Enforcement Directorate of India, which is designated to actually investigate and prosecute money laundering. Now, this Enforcement Directorate has its branches only in 5 cities of India. So, in a country of more than 4,000 cities and towns, we see that the money laundering is being investigated by an agency which has its branches in only 5 cities of India. And moreover, we see that there are only 49 offices of this Enforcement Directorate all over India. So, in terms of infrastructure, we see that India is quite under-resourced to investigate and prosecute such a big offense like money laundering. Then secondly, in terms of human resource, I would like to tell you that there are only 1,000 personnel deputed in the Enforcement Directorate, whereas the sanction strength of the Enforcement Directorate is around 2,000. So only 50% of the human resource is available with the Enforcement Directorate for all the entire paraphernalia of anti-money laundering efforts. And then a very important issue that I would like to highlight is that once you have only one money laundering designated agency in the country, there has to be an extraordinarily smart and efficient referral mechanism. Such a referral mechanism should be in place which would actually cater for all the cases that should be referred from, for example, police, RBI and CBI, etc. So in the absence of a comprehensive referral mechanism, there is a very less likelihood that all types of ML activity will be examined, investigated and prosecuted in India. Now, the second core issue as per FATF methodology is about to what extent is ML activity being investigated and prosecuted consistent with the country's risk profile. So when we talk about the risk profile, we see that India could complete its national risk assessment in 2019 only, which is quite late in terms of global money laundering, anti-money laundering efforts. Once NRA was completed in 2019, we can well imagine that the law enforcement agency which was designated to investigate and prosecute ML got very little time to actually build its capacity to respond to all challenges related to money laundering investigations and prosecutions. So NRA being so late, we can well imagine that the money laundering investigations and prosecutions are not actually in line with the risk profile. In terms of numbers, we see that when we look at the data that was quoted by the Indian government in the parliament, from the year 2005 to 2019, the monthly average of money laundering investigations in India was only 13 cases per month, which is too low, which is quite low. And when we see the investigations being converted into prosecution, the same sort of investigation to prosecution ratio getting lower and lower is something that we observe. And talking about the conviction rate, we see that from the year 2005, when the Enforcement Directorate got the mandate of investigating and prosecuting ML, to the year 2019, that is almost 14 years, there were only 15 convictions of money laundering. So Enforcement Directorate of India could get only 14 convictions in 15 years, hardly one conviction a year. From these figures, we can well imagine money laundering investigations and prosecutions in India. It is in no way effective, proportionate or dissuasive. Well, India does have Anti-Money Laundering Act, and the approach that has been adopted in this Anti-Money Laundering Act is the scheduled offence approach, which means that predicate offences are listed in the schedule of the Anti-Money Laundering Act. But the bigger problem that I see is that India has a threshold approach towards the predicate offences, which means that a predicate offence has to have the proceed of crime to the tune of probably 80 lakh INR in order to be a predicate offence of money laundering. And this kind of monetary threshold for the application of money laundering to the predicate offences is something which is not in line with the FATF recommendations. Any offence which has the potential to generate proceed of crime that can be laundered should be considered a predicate offence to money laundering without any monetary threshold. So this is something I feel India needs to address. Well, as apparent by multiple media reports, we see that India is a very lucrative destination for gold smuggling. But once we see the aspect of or the element of money laundering being investigated in connection with gold smuggling, that is too low. So again, this is something that highlights India's inefficiency in combating money laundering through parallel financial investigations, especially with smuggling offences. And this also shows that India is not investigating and prosecuting money laundering in line with the country's risk profile. Well, from the experience of the money laundering action plan that Pakistan was given by FATF, and Pakistan very comprehensively actually completed that action plan even before the deadline given by FATF. From this success story, we see that the FATF methodology on the basis of which Pakistan's actions against money laundering were being measured and evaluated is a very comprehensive methodology, and it is a very objective sort of a methodology which assesses the performance of countries against four core issues in a very methodical and objective manner. And from all the deficiencies that have been just pointed out by me, we see that India is far from fulfilling even the basic requirements of the core issues related to anti-money laundering efforts. And we sincerely hope that FATF would look into all these glaring sort of deficiencies in India's anti-money laundering regime, which are impacting not only India's economy but also the economies associated with India, APG countries.